evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody, including those on Zoom, to...
Is your mic on?
Mine is, yes. To the Redistricting Advisory Committee meeting agenda, or meeting for Wednesday, August 18th, 2021.
There you go.
Given the situation we are in relative to COVID, I would ask that those of you who are non-vaccinated, please wear a mask, and encourage those of you who are vaccinated to wear one as well. Unless you're coming up to the podium to speak, that's fine. If you'd all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, I appreciate it. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I suspect that we have a few members who might be absent due to the fires in and around their neighborhood. We won't know. Did you get any calls from anybody?
Thank you. Ms. Fisher, Ms. Araka may attend via Zoom, so we'll admit her to the meeting should we see her.
Okay.
Microphone.
I received a text message from Stephanie at about 4 o'clock, said she was packing. So okay. I don't think she's going to make the meeting.
No, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah. Hope she's safe. All right. Roll call. You've got there's only one member in the audience, and you can see all the rest of us. So I think you can take attendance that way. Entertain a motion to approve the August 18th agenda.
So moved. Second.
And moved and seconded for approval. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Item 4, approval of the July 28th minutes.
They looked good for me. Unless anybody has any issues, I'll move to approve.
And moved and seconded to approve the minutes of July 28th. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Oh, so moved. So approved. Public matters not on the agenda. First of all, I'd like to go, do we have anyone on Zoom?
We do. I am looking to add currently, so let me.
I do want to remind everybody on Zoom as well as in the audience and on the dais, we are recording. And if you don't recall, there's a link on our website, on the county website. It takes you to those recordings. Okay. Anyone on Zoom wish to make any comment on their public matters? Hearing none, seeing none. Anyone on the dais? I'll call public matters closed. Moving quickly to item number 6. Item number 6 and item number 7 review all community of interest input, which was what I and staff put in, and then Tom Patton put in item number 7 for the approval process. They're kind of the same thing. I had kind of that in mind. Where are we now? Just to reiterate, we've developed a website, we've developed a handout, we've developed the flyers, we've developed kind of set a process for how we're operating here. We've been collecting community of interest suggestions, and we have a rather lengthy list that we've compiled from a variety of sources. A number of us on the committee have spent time in the Public Works Department on the computer, kind of identifying these communities of interest and or visualizing what future district boundaries might look like. So we're at this point now, from the chairman's perspective, that we have, I think we should discuss the community of interest in greater detail. There are some of them that, for example, I'm just have Kirkwood in mind. I mean, it's not going anywhere. And it's unless someone has got a really, really strange configuration of district boundaries, it's still going to be in that district. So while Kirkwood is a community of interest and we would acknowledge that, I don't think it's anything we're going to fight over. So we might want to just, if we have consider this a current master list, we might just want to draw a line through Kirkwood and say, you know, we're not giving that a whole lot of other energy. Am I speaking to myself, or is that general consensus? I see a lot of nodding heads and chewing mouths, so I guess that's okay.
You can
So,
say that about a lot of those.
well, that's my point.
Jackson's probably not going out of District 1.
Jackson's not going anywhere. Ione's not going anywhere, I don't think. So I would like maybe to have that discussion, and we can. I had the list alphabetized, and I also had what we thought our staff determined the current district that they're in. Just I thought that'd be kind of informational if for discussion purposes. We should put that up, Jennifer, for Zoom folks so they can see what we're talking about. There we go. And can you put that up, and then can you also have the Zoom people on there so we can see them at the same time?
She's sharing the screen, so that's why we're seeing what the Zoom people see. So it kind of dwarfed the.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure that if someone raised their hand up there, that we could tell. Right.
We can. I have it on.
You can tell?
Yeah.
Okay, as long as you can tell, I'm fine with that. Okay. So having said that, I'll ask Tom if there's any additional comments he wants to say before we move ahead. Your mic on?
Microphone. How's that? Yeah, in the process of going through the mapping with, thanks to the county's assistance, Ann and I were able to come up with a couple of new proposed communities of interest. In her area, she had one designated as Grinding Rock, which was the general area around the Chauncey area. And I had conceived of one called the Dry Creek, which turned out to be pretty large because we're trying to encompass large parcels with, forested areas, agricultural areas that seem to be surrounded by developed, higher density areas. And the protection of those watersheds, I believe was, or is something that can be considered. And you have the handout. Do you want me to read that? Okay. The Dry Creek Community of Interest is located between the census-designated places of Lockwood and Fiddletown, defined generally as larger parcels ranging from 20 acres and up, located in and bordering north and south of the South Fork of Dry Creek, which is the major waterway going through there. Also included are the North and South Rancheria watersheds, consisting of agricultural and open forest lands with residences. Special interests generally include maintaining and protecting the natural environment created by Dry Creek and tributary watersheds, enhancing viewsheds in all directions, promoting responsible recreational values, forest management, timber harvesting, agriculture, fire protection, which has taken on a whole new meaning, and management of wildlife habitat. but it turns out to be a pretty large area. It's the biggest one we would have, in the county, ranging, from east to west, from Ponderosa Way on the east all the way to the Brockman Mill and Quartz Mountain, borders, Fiddletown Road on the north and Shake Ridge on the south. So that's the general outline, and my question that I asked to be put on the agenda was, how do these communities of interest become recognized? Because we're not recognized right now on this list. So do I just ask you to add it? How does it happen?
The answer is yes, it would be on the list, but you submitted it after we had created the agenda, so that's why it's not on the list.
So that's the only reason then? Okay,
It's the only reason it's not on the list.
great.
This is Andy Byrne. It's my understanding a community interest is a community of interest. I mean, it's not what we say it is, it's what people who live there say it is. And it's not, I don't think it's for us to, accept or reject one. I think we just take it into account, we map it if we can map it, and we use that as data when we're doing our mapping. Because as we talked before, there will be communities of interest that are going to get cut, have divisions in them. It's just, that's going to be inevitable at some point. But we can't avoid that if we don't know where they are. And so getting them mapped is the key, as I see it. So did you get this one on a map?
Yeah, it's on a map. It says Ann and Tom.
Cool.
I think it was this, Rosalind's got it. I don't know if you could put it up. Or not?
Because there's a lot of communities of interest.
I think it was put up at the last meeting that I missed.
I thought we did see that. Yeah. A lot of these communities of interest, even though because there's ones that aren't mappable or they're discontinuous. The idea of them are discontinuous, and they may not be usable in this context. But if it's on the map, it's data points that we can use when we're drawing lines.
And that, if I read that correctly, or Rislin, use that arrow and kind of point this arrow out, Dry Creek right there, right?
Yeah, so it's the blue area.
Yeah.
Now, it overlaps one that Don had done on his map, which took the Lockwood community of interest all the way up to, I think it was about Hale Road, which, Don, correct me if I'm wrong, is contiguous with the Lockwood Services, Community Services District, or border lines.
Lockwood Fire Protection District.
The Lockwood Fire Protection District. So that made sense, and that's another question. Can you have two communities of interest in the same area?
You can have a lot more than that.
You can, okay.
Yeah, look at Pine Grove. It's riddled with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can certainly overlap, but with the software we're using, you can't show that because
Gotcha.
a census block is going to be either part of one district or part of a different district. They can't be in more than one category.
And that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah,
Chairman
it's just the
Sweet.
downside of our mapping techniques again.
Chairman Sweet, we do have a comment from Ms. Heisenbuttel via Zoom. Please go ahead when ready.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry for being late, but I may have missed this while Tom was speaking, but I also on that map is the community of interest that I defined as Grinding Rock, which is carved out of the Pine Grove community of interest.
Yeah.
There it is on the screen.
Yeah, I mentioned that when I started off, Ann.
Thank you.
That one and Dry Creek, I believe, are the only two that aren't on the list at this point.
Yeah, it appeared that way to me.
Okay. So Don, according to Keith, they'll be on the list on the next revision.
Okay.
Which is great.
Thank you.
While we're at this point, I'd like to ask, I know it's possible, and I don't know whether everybody else is interested in having it done, so, but I think it would be useful. If we go through this list today and we take out some that we don't have to worry about, let's say Kirkwood, we don't have, because it's, yeah, as an example. If there's any others like that, we take that off. What's remaining, I would like to have each of those be their own layer so that we can layer them, we can drop them in later on down the road when someone comes up with a visualization of their five districts. I'd like to be able to drop each of them in individually, because when we drop them in all at once like this, we have too many color codes and they overlap, and I have to keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth to try to figure out who's under what. I'd like to do it just one at a time, if we could do that. I know it's gonna be a little more work on your part to create 15 or 35 or 45 layers, but does that seem to be, does that make sense to anybody? And I think it will certainly help people who are looking in from the audience, or because they haven't had the experience of doing it down here. Question.
I've been working at home on doing various visualizations, and I've come up with a number of different scenarios that are, of course, all theoretic at this point since we don't have the population data. But Rosalind was able to email to me a layer of the defined communities of interest that we have mapped already. And you can actually change the opacity of them individually within the program.
Yeah, and that may be okay for some people. I'm just thinking that if, I mean, look at how many we got there. Now, if we lay 5 districts over that, look at the variety of colors and the different opacities that you're going to have to create. I think if we did them one at a time, when we were talking about a particular area or a particular edge of a proposed district, and we can drop in what might be in or out of that area, and then we can have a discussion and say, okay, we need to make this move, or we didn't make this move, or this is an issue that we don't have to worry about because we can split that up because there's only 3 people in there. And I think those are the kinds of discussions we need to get into on a one at a time basis. Go ahead.
I think I can make what you're talking about be available as a web app on the hub site for access at home for anyone. I'm fairly confident I can do that. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's working pretty well for me. I've been getting a lot of visualization stuff.
The only thing I guess we would need to iron out is which version to do that with.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different versions. I mean, they're all pretty much the same. They've all kind of been working from, we had Andy 2 layer, and then that became Dawn. That was the most fleshed out, but then everyone else kind of splintered from there.
And well, they think there's gonna be a lot more of those. I mean,
I see an advantage to what Keith is talking about in that you could actually show where they overlap. So I mean, you could create the one map with a particular community of interest, and then so for example, the Grinding Rock one where it would pop up, and you would see if you popped up a second one where it's overlapping in Pine Grove, because since we're cut up with these census blocks, I think that might actually be a really easy tool. Like I don't know what you guys are talking about as far as the lightning and dark, the impact. How did you describe the opacity? Thank you, of that. Maybe that would get us the same thing, but I do understand what Keith is going from, because we're both probably on the non-technical end of this. And I could see what he's talking about as just having things pop in and out, where you can show it with this layer without that layer, and that one thing being on that layer. I get that. Yeah. So I'm not sure if that's the best way of going about it, but it certainly makes a lot of sense to me.
well, it gives us more flexibility.
Yeah.
We can put 2 of them up, 2 layers on, 3 layers on, one at a time, we can do all different kinds of things with them as opposed to having them all on there and then having to layer over just the proposed, district. So, I'm going to request that if you don't mind, if for nobody else but me.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Don, do you think there's a way of, pardon me, of getting that same effect where we get overlap that we wouldn't have otherwise? Do you follow what I'm saying?
If each of the COIs are a layer of themselves, then we would be able to overlap them effectively.
Yeah, that's the big advantage I'm seeing is so you can actually flesh out your COI a little bit better than having it just bump up against the next one, which is a problem we've had in some of the mapping.
Yeah, it's just that managing that many layers is going to be challenging.
Well,
Rosalind, you said that you were going to email us some of, was it these modifications and whatnot that you were talking to about with Dawn and Tom over here, or were you suggesting that we could go on Esri as a whole from home?
I meant I can create a web app on that hub site that would allow you to control each of those communities of interest as a separate layer, turning them on and off. However, if you wanted to do that in this redistricting software, it would be a little bit different as far as their creation. Because, for example, when you say overlap, you mean kind of like this, right? Where you have Sutter Creek, you have that pink and that blue. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're able to overlap them right now because some of those are not, they're in a different layer, correct? So the colors will get muddled together because they're showing an overlap. Is that what you're describing?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 or 3 different things that we're all talking about, right? So on one hand, what I'm talking about is the web app that just allows you to manipulate each of these communities of interest individually. I guess that's kind of less important than what you're talking about as far as being able to overlap the layers individually. I see. Okay.
And a layer for every one of these.
Okay. Doable, yes.
Then I can play with any 1, 2, 3, or 4, or all 45 of them at once.
I'll have to really look into it and play with it to see how to do it, but I think it can be done. Basically, instead of having, for example, right now, this is Don's plan, where he has all these, oh, wait, no, never mind.
Well, that one right there, whatever anybody individually has created, if they understand it, that's fine, but when they come in to explain it, and we have a set of districts that we want to lay on top of all that. Now we've got 5 more colors we're adding on top of all those colors. So
we
I
can
would like
definitely
to lay,
have these.
I would like to lay the 5 colors down that someone would be proposing in the future as a visualization of 5 districts, and then drop each of those in one at a time.
Okay.
And we can talk about it as we drop it in.
Doable. The only thing I really need is communities that you are done manipulating. Because if you keep manipulating them, then it's a never-ending.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Right now, we haven't manipulated any. We just created them. We have a list, and that's what we're talking about tonight. I want to talk about these so that we can have a little better sense of what we want to approve, to use Tom's word.
As per your issue with the conflicting colors and all the different colors and whatnot, there's in the settings of the app here, I guess you could call it, you can make it where it's just the outline of the color, and you don't have to have it filled in. There doesn't have to be any opaqueness, any color. It's just outlined. So then you can see the outline of the district, and then you can see all the COIs individually.
I just want to look at them one at a time.
Yeah, and
Right now, if I bring that up, I looked at 50 of them.
right,
Mhm.
and,
We can move ahead off of this, I think, because we have, it's capable and Ruslan will do it.
yeah.
Hopefully we use
But
it.
I have one more comment if I can, Keith, Andy.
I don't want you to make any comment.
Okay.
Go
Well,
ahead.
what it would do is I might probably want to go back to my map and map them individually, because some of the ones I've done, and Dawn has done also, they changed the size because of the one next to it. It was like, oh, does this one belong here or here? Whereas that one district, I would put it in both, because it actually, it's an overlap. And so what you're talking about with doing, but I would like to go back and redo my own.
Real quick, exactly that. So if you want them to both overlap and be kind of turn on and off individually, then that's what would need to happen. You would need to basically make a district plan for each community
Yeah.
that you feel
It
comfortable
would
with.
be the one district in the county.
Yes.
Yeah, and it would just be another layer. And
Correct.
that would be, I would be happy to go redo my map, that way. And just create, it would be 30 different pages now instead of one.
Yes. And then I can take each one of those and make them all their own layer, and then they'll not only overlap, but they'll also be, you can turn them on and off and do whatever you want with them.
That list on the left is
Trying to
gonna
get
be really
Ruslan to
big.
do that for you, so.
Well, the thing is, I would,
But you're welcome to do it.
no, I think I'd rather do it, because I think some of the in the area that I'm not gonna do it for the area outside of Pine Grove, because I'm not as familiar with the details of it. But I would be happy to go do it through that area, because those are like when the group that that Jan's involved, Jan and I are involved with, we were creating those that way to start with by what we knew was on the ground. And the mapping tool kind of contorted it a little bit because of the way we're collecting using just the census blocks, the census sections. So that made it more difficult. So it changes the way I look at it when I go back to do it. So I'd be happy to go do that again.
Okay, good.
Follow up to Andy's point, just for the record, I made a bunch of changes expanding the Fiddletown community of interest the other day. So I don't know how we handle those, but somehow they need to get incorporated into whatever mapping we end up with.
Is that the one I saw that went all the way to Sacramento?
Yeah.
Well, and that makes sense if you can draw these big ones, that we'll have them as a tool when we're drawing these lines. It's like you said, we're going to end up cutting some stuff up just because it's going to be inevitable. But I think that's a great way of approaching it.
Well, in the case of Fiddletown, I don't think any of it would be split up between districts.
Depends on how you attack the district line problem.
Okay,
Okay.
we
Whatever.
settled on that, I think.
One more thing.
We got a consensus, we can move ahead on that.
One more thing. So back to kind of what Dawn was saying about how many layers there will be. So this is Tom's version of Fiddletown, but then there's a handful of other versions.
Right.
So that's all just, want that all in?
Okay, let's talk about that. How can we move ahead with 3 Fiddletown versions? And at what point will we, I guess, I'm thinking, at the point where we are when we put up a prospective district map that someone or someones have created. At that point, I suppose we would need all 3 of those Fiddletown maps. Because we haven't yet decided what that Fiddletown area is, and we won't decide until we look at it and talk about it, and we look at the numbers that are in each of those 3 choices. So I don't see a way around it other than to have 3 at this point.
Yeah, that one there, that one obviously is based on the boundaries of the census designated place of Fiddletown. Because you can see it,
Yeah.
over, the layer is overlaid over the, census designated place, layer.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Is the census designated place of Fiddletown, does that take priority over someone's suggestion that Fiddletown should be larger than that? Discussion.
For us to decide.
Yeah.
I queried a bunch of people that live along Fiddletown Road and both sides that currently are not included in the community of interest. And I said, well, where do you identify as your home? And they all, everybody has said Fiddletown. And you go quite a bit east and still get that answer. And you know, they have a Fiddletown address.
Right, that's,
Yeah.
They relate.
Fiddletown zip code.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
Fiddletown zip code, but they relate to, that community. You know, they participate in their volunteer activities. They go to their functions.
So do I.
So do you, and so do I. And
Right, but,
we're not in Fiddletown.
right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a real arbitrary deal.
So ladies and gentlemen,
But these were previously undesignated areas that I added. Okay, that were not in anybody's community of interest already. So it just seemed like, in all fairness, we had to include those people. That one. Now, Don, did you add the stuff to the west?
No,
Did you pick up that?
never seen.
okay, now see, here would be a good point. This addresses my point. We have the census designated area of Fiddletown, which I don't see there. And then you have Tom's choice for Fiddletown, which I think is that what we're showing there, right? So now if we had just those two and we had those two layers, we could see where we have the distinct differences, which we can't do at this point. So I guess that just reinforces what I was saying. But to move ahead, I guess we have to have both of those until such time as we've created districts so that we can see which ones and how the numbers fall, et cetera, which is why we have more meetings scheduled than just one a month.
Right.
And this, for example, in this meeting, we've already gone 40 minutes and we haven't gotten to the agenda item yet. Which is what I expected. Okay. Having beat that up a little bit, I think we have an idea what we're talking about. Let's take a look at the list. And I guess what I would like everybody to look at is, to start with anyway, the concept of Kirkwood. Kirkwood is something that is not going to go anywhere. We're not going to split it up. It's in a position that nothing's going to happen to it. And we accept that it's a community of interest, and we accept that it's going to be in a particular district. There's going to be no lines drawn through it, et cetera, that I can visualize it at this point. So can we find any other places on this list that meet that category so that we won't have to make a layer for Kirkwood, and we won't have to make a layer for any other ones on here? So that they're just not going to confuse anybody moving forward. Well, and we'll have a record of what we've done and what we've taken out of our potential layers.
Yeah.
Well, I think, an easy place to start would be any incorporated town.
Right, all the cities.
Yes. Ione, Plymouth, Sutter Creek, Jackson, and Amador City.
Well, we already have layers for those, so we clearly don't have to relayer those because they're all, we can use the sphere of influence or the city boundaries. Mm-hmm. So those layers are already in existence.
Right.
And they meet a second criteria because we're going to layer them in, but we wouldn't have to layer Kirkwood in. So there's a difference.
Yeah, no, I agree.
The two.
I agree. Yeah, I don't know that I can't think of anything offhand that would be that obvious as Kirkwood.
Well, okay,
I think,
I haven't done that process through this list. Can we
Yeah.
go through that list and do
Yeah.
it that way, just to see if we
Sure.
find any others? Anything come to mind?
I think it might also be helpful, while if we're gonna go through the list, to identify which ones, if the ones we can figure out where we're likely to have multiple versions, as opposed to ones where we think we can pick a version and have, because I see having multiple versions being a problem.
So, multiple versions of,
Of.
the COI.
Fiddletown. I understand the need for it, but if we're gonna have this whole list be open, that there could be 2 or 3 different interpretations of that, we're gonna run out, gentlemen, I think we're gonna run out of time, and ladies, I'm sorry, we're gonna run out of time to get this all figured out, because
Okay.
you, at some point, we have to start, corralling the cats, so to speak,
well,
and so I think if we can identify which ones of these are not subject to them having multiple versions, that would be useful, probably, as he starts to do this. And I think
right.
that's confusing to us. Which version are we talking about with this? And
well,
I would
I
make-
agree. So, for example, Kit Carson would fall into the same category
Sure.
as Kirkwood.
Sure.
Okay.
I wanted to say is, now let's go ahead and move ahead. It'll come back to me.
One of them was listed as way up country, so.
Yeah.
that's
yeah.
the same thing as Kirkwood?
Can I assume that
That's a dawn.
Yeah, I did that.
Kirkwood South or Kirkwood West?
Kirkwood North?
Basically, it was all the, uninhabited,
Forest Service land.
census blocks that are east of, the, intersection of 88 and Shake Ridge. And there's very few people up there, actually, 93. And, and I just lumped them into one community of interest, and that's subject to change. I'm more than willing to, withdraw that or modify it in any way. It was just a way of making the map look more whole, in that it was part of a group, all the multiple, census blocks.
So Sherwood Forest would fall into that category.
Okay, I have one comment on this. That's not good. So, are we okay?
Yeah.
I can see the multiple drawings of each COI, so let's say like the Fiddletown example where we have 3 Fiddletowns. I think that's less worrisome. We could just have a placeholder, and when we get to the point where we're finding lines, then we bring them back, right? So if we find that this community is going to have lines drawn somewhere near it, we bring back the multiple layers and we discuss it then when it becomes an issue. I don't know that we have to. I mean, you can take the ones out that you're talking about. I don't have an issue with that at all. If they're, the big ones up country, that one's not going to be an issue. But lines could be anywhere else in the county at this point from our perspective, right? So I don't know that anything from, halfway through what is currently District 3 down now would be good to remove them, because then we're just blinding ourselves.
Let's call this a simple exercise to address what you've just described.
Right.
So that he doesn't have to create a layer for it.
Fair enough.
Okay. So we have way up country. We've got Kit Carson, we've got Kirkwood. Sherwood Forest.
There's upcountry too. There's upcountry and way upcountry.
Well,
Yeah.
Up country as it stands today is divided, so it probably should stay.
Yeah, I agree to that. Okay.
And Sherwood Forest is in an area that couldn't conceivably be part of a district split.
I agree.
Is that low?
More so than Sierra Pines.
Because it's closer to Shake Ridge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll leave Sherwood Forest alone for the moment.
I mean, Sierra Pines is at the very tip of 88 and Shake Ridge, and it is unlikely to end up being in one of the other districts.
Mace Meadows,
I would probably classify that as District 3.
I don't hear any objection to Mace Meadows.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not getting, at this point, as we get down lower, I can imagine mapping processes that would cause these issues, but, and I just don't like the idea of dropping things out. I'd rather just have one layer. I don't think it's that heavy of a lift to get it as a layer.
We haven't removed them from the map.
Yeah.
And we can always have them on our reminder list, so if there's an issue, and if we get close to Mace Meadows, we might want to bring it back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And Ruslin, what do you think? Do you think it's too premature, or what do you think? Since you're the one who's going to be doing it.
Well, what I'm envisioning right now is however many plans we have times however many communities we have, that's how many layers we're going to have. So using that alone might be confusing. I mean,
yeah, that's what I was trying to bring up. It's going to be challenging managing.
Right now, we're going to use these, and then when we get to the different plans, we'll take the plans one at a time. So you're only talking about these layers with one plan. Then then what I envision is, and that's something that Don comes up with, a plan. Then we have a plan that Andy has that looks maybe dissimilar to that. We'll talk about that. And we're going to narrow these down over conversations and find the most effective one that we all can agree on. I don't know any other way to go about it. And I'm sure there are other things that will occur to all of us as we move forward. So if we'll just start with that at this point. Carson Pass Pines.
I don't know where that is.
It's got to be up there.
Carson Pass Pines is right off Shake Ridge Road.
Top what?
It's right off of Shake Ridge Road, right past Buckhorn. Or Buckboard Road.
Okay. Is that going to be low enough to be potentially in someone else's thoughts?
Well, right now it is on a dividing line.
Okay, well then we'll leave it in. We'll leave it in. Okay. How about Amador Pines South and Amador Pines units? No, they're split already, so never mind.
Yeah.
Casey Ransich.
Quick question. What are we
Anything
defining as Amador Pines units?
Pardon?
Is that everything like Amador? Because I understand that there's Amador
Those
Pines
are subdivisions.
East, West, all that.
Subdivision Amador Pines South.
Yeah, those are legally defined subdivisions.
Yeah.
Okay. So the units are everything else that's defined as Amador Pines.
All right. So I'll reiterate, going from the bottom. I know that Wandering Hills North and Wandering Hills South, those are up there, aren't they?
Yeah. Those are right next to Sierra Pines.
So you're suggesting that there's a potential there?
No, what I'm suggesting is that they're right next to Sierra Pines.
Well, you wanted to leave Sierra Pines in, so, right?
No, I suggested it be removed.
Oh, okay.
Because it's unlikely to get split up, being
All right.
at the very tip of 88 and Shake Ridge.
So I'm going to start at the bottom, what we've crossed out so far to put on a sub list. Not you don't have to do anything with it. It's just that we're going to have it on these are the ones that we've technically removed and do not have a layer. Would be Wandering Hills North and South, way up country, undefined. Sutter Highlands, Sierra Pines, Mace Meadows, Kirkwood, Kit Carson, and that's all that we've discussed to cross off at this point.
And the incorporated cities, right?
Okay, now, a second discussion that was raised by several of the members was our incorporated cities, which we have both the city limits and we have the
Sphere of influence.
yeah, right. Those we're going to map in two ways.
They already exist, so that's.
I know.
No work there.
Okay. So is there any other thoughts about this list before we turn it over to Ruslan and he starts, along with several other members, begin mapping? Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question, top of the middle column, Lower Ridge Road Community. Does that have a defined beginning and end?
Not at this point, but we do have people who submitted this list who can speak to that at some point when we begin talking about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to give staff a little help there.
Yeah.
So I won't be creating any new shapes. I will just be taking what's been created and making them into layers. And again, as you mentioned with the opacity, that you want things to layer on top of each other, that'll need to be changed. You know, if you want, for example, Bruce, when you worked on maybe communities and you made, I don't know, Dry Town, and now you're thinking you want it to overlap with something else, you would need to make that shape so that, you know, I could do the other half of that. Does that make sense?
I guess the other way of asking the question, has somebody created an area called Lower Ridge Road Community?
Yeah,
That's my question.
Okay.
it's,
All right, so let's do it from the reverse. I understand the question, we'll get back to it. Let's identify off this list the ones we already have something for. So,
how did you get this list? Because I thought the list was created from stuff we've mapped.
pardon me?
I thought that how did you create this list?
We created this list from everybody who made a submission. There's a group in Pine Grove that submitted an entire list.
Okay.
Individuals who submitted.
So we don't know if they're all mapped
pieces,
yet.
And we compiled all those together into this one list,
Okay.
with the exception of Tom's two suggestions, which will be added onto that list.
Right.
So we know what Amador City is, and we know what the sphere of influence is. We've got that. Has anyone, do we have a defined area for Amador Pines South and Amador Pines units that anybody has done any mapping for?
Actually, Stephanie and I worked on that, District 3, Katya. Stephanie and I worked on Amador Pines, and we were labeling that as mostly District 3, but there is definitely some that spread into District 5. So we were kind of working.
Right now we just want to know where they are, not in what districts they're in. I only put these districts up in here just as a point of reference for tonight and in the future. These are the current districts. They may change dramatically over time.
So Amador Pines is above Knob Hill, above Mace Meadows, by about.
I know where it is, but have you mapped it?
Yes.
Okay, so it's been mapped. So Ruslan should be able to get a map from that. Aqueduct, has it been mapped? Onofoy?
We can check.
Yeah. I think we'd have to look at I'd have to go through my map and just list off what I had on my list.
Oh, yeah, there it is. It's there.
Yeah, I think that was a lot of the ones that came from the original Pine Grove list that, Jan and the group that we were working with created. Dawn and I mapped all those.
Okay, so what I want to do is put an M by each one of these that you guys have mapped. That's all I'm trying to do.
Good, yeah. I just am not remembering the names because we were mapping it by mapping criteria and tagging the name onto it.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
You're talking Lower Ridge Road community?
I'm going down this list one at a time.
Okay. I'll wait till you get there.
You jump in.
Well, if nobody knows what it is, I'm just making a speculation that perhaps somebody submitted a community of interest form and named it that. And if they did, there would be the geographic boundaries on that list.
I actually think it's one that I did, that Dawn and I did. Yeah, and it was by looking at neighborhoods, and it was a big one that we did. Do you remember that one? It was the stretch. We basically stretched down Ridge Road because we wanted to make it clear that that's an area that has currently been disrupted by boundary lines, and that there are neighborhoods in there, and we left it as a big one, but we're thinking that actually there's a bunch of small ones. It's actually made up of a bunch of small ones. We did it bigger because of the quirks of the mapping process. So that's where that came from, on the specifics of the Lower Ridge. And we just named it that because that's where it was.
Okay, but you have a map for it.
It should be on my map, yeah.
All right, so Ruslan, can you bring that up so that we can read those?
Yes.
And
Yes.
let's,
So this list right here is everything that's been mapped. Well, by everything, I mean Dawn's version, because that's the most fleshed out one.
Yeah.
And that's the one that everyone's been kind of working off of. Luckily, it's in alphabetical order. I don't believe there's a specific Lower Ridge.
No, there isn't.
There's a ridge.
Yeah.
It's just ridge.
okay. Well, I've never seen that legend, and I can't read it from here anyway.
It's
So-
because wait till they're all a layer.
So you're suggesting that many of those are on this list. All I want to know is which ones aren't on this list.
Yeah, that'd be good, because we do need to get those mapped.
So
So
we don't
this
have to all
isn't
sit
a-
here and do that. We can,
This
Ruslan
isn't
can
a
do that.
legend. So this is just the mapped communities. So we can, I mean, this theoretically should be, everything here should be on the paper.
Right.
Everything.
Well, you could
on-
just print that list, and then we could go down.
Everything on there is already on here.
It should, unless,
Everything on there is a map, though.
exactly.
Right.
So every one of these have been mapped, but when I call names out, people don't know whether they.
Well, that's what I'm saying,
No,
it should.
Actually, everything on this has not been mapped.
Okay.
Everything there is there because it is mapped.
Right.
That's my point.
Okay.
Which,
Can you print that
let's
list?
start all over again. I want to know what those are on this list here.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and I don't want to take any more time to do that. If Ruslan can just compare those, then he knows which ones we need to still map.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, for instance.
And then we can send that out to all of us, and we can decide, the mappy people can go map again.
To make it simple, Ruslan, can you print out and compare the two and then just give us a list of the ones that have not been mapped, and then we can go through and do that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, but not right at the moment. You can't do that. No, okay. All right,
Or, sorry.
so, if I understand myself correctly, we have a legend of the maps that have been done.
Right.
And we have a list of all of those that have been submitted. When we compare the two, we'll end up with a list of those that have not been done. And that list will be submitted to all the members of the commission, and those who have any interest can proceed to map them. All right. So then what's next after that?
Then I can start making the individual layers, right?
Yeah, we assume that when we come back at our next meeting, you'll have those all done.
I have to, right?
Also, quick question. What is Casey Ranchettes?
Casey Ranchettes is a subdivision up off of, Upper Lower Ridge Road.
Upper, Lower
Ridge Road. You've gotta love it.
Okay.
It's a subdivision. A lot of these are subdivisions.
And another one that is on the list and not mapped, is Electra. And I'm not sure how likely it is Electra would end up being a, supervisory, order.
Well, I think it's technically still in Amador County, but it's just really close to the Calaveras County line.
There
Well, I
are
know where
others
it
on
is.
this,
But it's a road and
It's
it only
one of
goes
my
3
dead-end
miles.
roads.
You're correct, and I think
And
there's
it's
several
right on
others
the
on
board,
this list
right
that
on the
fall into
boundary
that,
of the county.
that we'll see when we start with the districts.
And it's one, that's a block.
So, at our next meeting, assuming Rosalind's going to be able to get enough time to do these things, when is our next meeting? I have my calendar in front of me.
September 1st?
It'd have to be in September.
That's in 2 weeks.
So we could do September 1st or the 8th. I'm sorry.
We had it.
We do, correction, anytime after the 15th.
Now, our next
The
meeting
1st
is
of
September
October.
1st.
The room here will be utilized, so anytime after the 15th of September to October 1st, we can hold our meeting here. Prior to that, we cannot.
We settled on September 1st, last meeting.
Was it, oh, before the 3rd.
There you
So
go.
we can do the 1st. Sorry, I don't have the calendar right up in front of me.
Yep.
So,
The meetings that we settled on were,
we'll be meeting on the 1st.
anyway, our next meeting is the 1st, scheduled meeting. And then we don't have another meeting scheduled until,
29th.
No.
That's what I got on my calendar.
I believe that's
September
correct.
1st, September 29th,
Right.
October 13th, October 20th and 27th, and November 4th.
So does September 1st look like a workable thing for you, Rosalind?
Yeah, just, can I ask for permission to not, duplicate communities that are the same? For example, Dawn's version of Dry Town, and if it's the same as Wayne's version of Dry Town, I don't need both of them there, just
No,
one.
you do not.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I would say that, I would say that if as long as it's there, we can argue about its boundaries later.
Yeah.
So any one of them, as long as there's a placeholder there, like I said, if we're drawing a line and we're going through there, then we, as a group, can decide where those boundaries are.
Yeah, and in Dry Town, probably there's not a whole lot of differentiation probably between the two, but there might be two
Yeah.
significant differences between what one of you thought a
Put the
playground
bigger
was
one
to
in.
be and what the other
No,
one
really,
thought
just put the
playground
bigger one in.
was. Yeah.
And, well, also, I have a suggestion, and you can take it with a grain of salt, but if there are 2 different versions of a community of interest, just, number them and don't put any identifiers.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, we do have, the census data for the county has been submitted. We know what the new census data is in terms of the total number, and in terms of the city populations. But I'm still under the impression, I haven't heard differently, that we will not get the census district numbers until the end of September. Is that still the
I
current
believe
plan?
so, the 30th. Right now, they're released in legacy format, so if you open it up, you need Microsoft Access, and then you have to extract out whatever data it is you're looking for, I believe. It's, yeah, it's doable, but it's kind of a headache.
Would it, I mean, if you did it.
I tried, I wasn't able, I don't have that much experience.
Okay, well then we don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Okay, so we can still begin working on visualizations of districts. We might want to turn our attention to that. Some of you folks are still working on some leftover communities of interest that might pop up from this list comparison. And we want everybody to understand that for those of you who are watching this on YouTube in the future, whenever we are designing or creating potential districts, we are just thinking about them at this time. We'll call them visualizations, and they are not, they're draft forms for which we will have a lot of discussion between now and October. So if you happen to see any of these on the screens in the future, remember that we said that's exactly what these are, and they'll be that way until probably the end of October. So
Maybe even November.
any additional comments, any more direction for our agenda for next meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I played around a little with the preliminary census data, and I have a ballpark figure on persons per supervisorial district, and if
Fire away.
I can pass that out, I will.
Oh.
It tried to factor in Mill Creek. What's really interesting is, and this was a surprise based on all that preliminary stuff we did, but the percent increase over 2010 was 7.2%. So Amador County actually grew more than I had anticipated.
Wow. It was sounding like earlier that it was almost decreasing in number.
Right. And so what it boils down to, a current estimate for each supervisorial district is 7,300. So that would give us a target number till we get something better.
Although that target number, when we're using the current software, wouldn't be the number we want because the numbers aren't in the right spots, you know, on our visualization, right?
This is about 500 more than the.
Right, and if you put them in that, you'd have one district that was super small. Because the current program doesn't have all the data in it to do that. Am I correct on that, Bruce?
You need the population per census block.
Right.
Work off.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yeah, thanks. Although it is interesting to see that number's gotten that much larger.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, based on the current evacuations situation, I'm leaving.
Can't blame you.
Feel free, and I just ask one more time, is there anything for the good of the order at all? If you have, we'll ask again for additional agenda items, but I think this next time we have a plan.
I think that's what we're doing. I mean, we're starting to see where the information's hitting the road, so.
All right. So we'll expect to have several visualizations of districts and maybe a complete set of maps for the submitted communities of interest.
Chairman Sweet, we do have a comment from Ms. Heisenbuttel. Please go ahead when ready.
I just wanted to confirm, currently we're scheduled to meet in September 1 and then not again until the 29th. Is that correct?
That is correct.
September 1st and the 29th, and the future meeting dates are also listed on the website as well.
And as long as you're comfortable that we don't need another meeting within the month of September, that's fine. But I wondered if, because of room availabilities, whether we ought to reserve another date.
This room is not available on any other date between those two.
Oh, okay. I thought she said after September 15th it was available. But I may be mistaken, sorry.
It is available, well, it's being utilized by the elections department for polling. And there may be other meetings from different departments that, have the room reserved, already. So should we need to meet between the 15th and the 29th, the 29th being our next scheduled meeting, we'd have to look and see if there was availability in the board chambers for any of those dates between the 15th and the 29th.
Okay,
And that's why we scheduled, more meetings in October.
that makes sense, thanks.
Also, Mr. Chairman, it looks like you have 2 more people who are looking to leave due to evacuations.
No, we're
So I think that would leave you with less than half.
done.
I think we're good.
Half?
We're done.
Okay.
Okay,
I asked,
thanks, I'll excuse myself.
we went around the table and everybody said goodbye.
Bye.
So stay safe, wear your masks, stay out of the smoke. Thank you very much for joining us on Zoom. Good night.